I was telling you the other day, the genius thing about him and what he's doing is that he has never once named Donald Trump in any of these posts. He speaks broadly and uses broad generalizations when he's doing a sermon. And the Pope is doing that here. The Pope isn't taking any hot takes. The Pope is saying war is bad and those who commit war are bad. He's saying the tyrants are bad. It's just Donald Trump is so stupid that he's coming out and being like, how dare you say that about me? Revealing to all of us what we already know.
Welcome back to another episode of Mildly Alarmed. I'm Nina, here with Justin again, and we're glad you're with us. We got a lot to cover this week on Make It Make Sense. We will be continuing our conversation about religion and politics, specifically how conservatives and liberals are pulling from very different parts of the Bible to justify their worldviews. We'll talk a little bit about the Trump's ongoing feud with the Pope, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd say. So that'll be a good time for all. Let's just jump right into it. Let's get back to what we were talking about last week. So last week we kind of traced our own origin stories with religion. You as a self-described front row Baptist,
I was
and me as a Protestant with a lot of Catholics around
sitting on the back
who,
row.
yeah, and meditating, because really I just kind of went into Buddhism for a long portion of my life. Um, Mostly I kind of fell into Buddhism in college, but what you we got to kind of college for you. We touched on it a little bit, but college was your like
Jumping
awakening,
off
for
point.
lack of a better term. You were around new people, you were
Got outside
listening
the
to new
bubble.
ideas. Yeah, you got
Yeah.
outside the bubble a little bit. Um, so what was that like? Like, what was your mindset in college, and how are things evolving for you? And how did your friends and family react to those changes?
Yeah, so I actually stayed in church for a little bit during college. They have the youth group, which is where you're at until you graduate high school. And then a bit like they do in Fallout 3, when you get too old for Little Lamplight, they send you to Big Town. That was kind of happening to me, to borrow a Fallout reference. I had to leave Little Lamplight and I had to go to Big Town. So they put you in this like singles, it's called the singles class. And it's for like young adults who are in college. So I was in that group and we would go and hang out and we would do like bowling and various things like that. But I didn't feel like I really fit in with those people. Uh, and then come to find out, I think they felt the same way about me, because I learned later that they would do things off on their own and their like little clique, but I was never really invited or a part of it, which at the time I honestly didn't really care that much because I was, like I said, I kind of recognized that like these people are, I don't know, we're not going to hang out. But it was interesting that when I started come coming out of the political closet, as it were, as a Democrat to all of them, and they started realizing this, they actually sent like a spy to infiltrate like my life to try and bring me back to Christ, because it was funny that like around that time they were almost thinking the two were synonymous. Like me becoming a Democrat was also me rejecting religion, God, because you can't be, and I may have even told this, now I'm thinking about it, I may have even told this, you cannot be a Democrat and a Christian. I think the choir director told me that. Someone told me that.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were really worried. They were really concerned for my soul because, I believed in healthcare for all. Very concerned for my soul. But yeah, so we would, this kid, who was a little older than me, I think, wanted to hang out. So we would go to the movies. And I thought he was just being like, a pal or whatnot. And I thought he just wanted to hang out or something. And I thought, okay, yeah, like, that could be cool. Like, I don't really know this dude that well. Like, I don't have a ton of friends at this time. Some have moved away to other colleges. This could be cool. So I hang out with this guy. So we go see, I think we saw like two movies. We went to the movies. But the thing is, like, it became obvious of what this was later when we were hanging out. Because when you're hanging out, no one's just going to ask you, Nina, how is your walk with God? That's not going to come up while you're ordering food.
Can't say I ever
You
had
know,
a friend ask me that.
yeah, like two pals just hanging out, two dudes, two bros, just chilling and hanging out. You're not going to be like, so, how is your walk with God? Tell me. And it's like, that's heavy. Um, it's just fine, thank you. How's yours? Like, so it became obvious of like, oh, I uh I see what's going on here. I see what's going on. Oddly enough, same thing happened to me a different time. I was at the gym and a guy wanted to hang out. He was like, "Hey man, I've seen you in here working out. Think we should be hang out and be cool." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess." And he was like, "Let's meet at Panera Bread and chill." And I was like, "That's kind of funny, Panera Bread, it's a place to chill." But I was like, okay, like I just moved to Raleigh proper, and I didn't really know anybody, so I was like, and I just started going to this gym, and I was like, all right, yeah, cool, that could be fun to hang out. And it turns out he was wanting to sell me on a pyramid scheme. I have a really hard time just hanging out with folks, it seems like, but someone's always trying to sell me something, whether it be Christ or, you know, chocolate bars. I don't know. So I'm always
Interesting.
cleaning products. So yeah, so that became obvious that that people were taking an interest in me. They thought that something was wrong with me because I all of a sudden had come out as a Democrat, that I was voting this way, that I had these, I was starting to share memes and things on my Facebook page, and people were concerned that I was supported Obama. It was very concerning, and so and then it just put a bad I just left. Like I was like, this isn't for me. This is ridiculous. Why am I even still going to this place? Why am I even still doing this?
Mm,
So
interesting.
yeah. So by the end of college, I was a heathen, bound for. I've accepted it now. It's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say my college experience was nothing like that, actually. I my high school was very socially social justice aware, and I immediately
Communist.
found those people in college as well. So I eventually ran a group called Idealists United. So that tells you a lot about my worldview. I hung out with the other leaders of the other groups, like Students for Sensible Drug Policy and the ACLU. Uh, can't say we were hanging out with the college Republicans. That was pretty much just the business school, though, at my university.
Of
So
course it was. The business kids or the young
yeah,
college Republicans.
yep.
Of course it
Uh,
was.
so we were out there protesting, bringing awareness, bringing interesting groups to the university. We did a lot of lobbying at the time for various things, trying to keep tuition from going up at UConn, trying to add gender identity and gender expression to Connecticut's anti-discrimination laws, which did in fact pass because Connecticut's cool like that. Um, and then I don't know, we were trying to get people involved. One of the things that I was actually really proud of was we at one point registered about 2,000 people to vote
That is
over the
awesome.
course of a couple of days. So, I mean, we were really trying to make a difference. And at no point in my college experience, well, no one has ever asked me in the history of time how my walk with God is, but also, I, uh, I had friends that were religious and none of them seemed to hold those convictions that you couldn't both be
What
a
were your
Democrat or a
what were your
socialist or a
religious friends?
communist.
What were your religious friends like?
So I
Were
had
they
friends of all religions. That's a thing to start with. I mean, I had Hindu friends, I had Muslim friends, I had Christian friends, I
your
had
Christian friends? Did they
Catholic friends.
Were they just Christian and that's who they were, or was it a huge part of their identity, or were they just like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I believe in God?
No, I mean I had friends who went to church every weekend.
Hmm.
Like I had those friends, but I think the thing that I noticed the most when I moved down here and away from Connecticut was like it was very rare to meet people in Connecticut, at least where I grew up, that your religion was your identity,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
like a religion was part of your identity and it might inform your morality, but no one was ever like, I'm Christian and that's all I am. And I think a lot of that came from the way that Christianity uh is integrated in Connecticut. It's like we were talking about last week where science and Christianity aren't at odds with each other. Like I never even went to a church where that was really a thing. It was just like, yeah, both of those things can be true. It's fine.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know, like mm, I had some friends who maybe had some parents who their religion was a little bit more of their identity than my friends. I like I was never going over to somebody's house and they were like preaching at me or dropping Bible quotes or anything like that. Like it just wasn't really a thing for us.
Hmm.
And to be honest, there were a lot of sort of like religious groups and chapters at our college of all religions. So like there was a lot of like all kinds of peoples were organizing and putting on events. I remember at one point, it just popped into my head, there was like a Jewish student group that actually hosted a debate on the Palestine-Israel problem at one point.
Really?
And like there were Palestinian kids and pro-Palestinian activists who came and we had like a legitimate debate slash discussion about what was going on in Israel and Palestine. I feel like one of the things that my college actually did really well, and my high school did this too, was especially if they saw that like one group, or if they even individual teachers, if they saw that you were really falling into like, I believe this and that's it, like I don't want to look at the other side of the debate. They did a really good job of challenging you to be like, yeah, but what about those arguments? Are these not valid arguments? It's kind of
Hmm.
like the old adage that one person's terrorist and another person's freedom fighter. Like there's there's always another side to the story, and I feel like my college and my high school did a good job of pushing back no matter what side you were on. I mean, even if the teacher was like, you could kind of tell they were more liberal or whatever, they would always try to push the conservative perspective too, to be like, you need to think about these things. You need to argue these things in your brain. You need to like understand the other side to the story.
Hmm.
Um, and if nothing else, it could just make your own arguments stronger as to why you believe what you believe, but you should still give like the other side a chance.
No, we didn't do anything like that growing up, in my church or anything like that. Don't even really think we did any of that in school. Um, but I've always felt that there was an insecurity there. People who are often insecure of a belief don't want to challenge it at all or debate it or even see the other side because there's an insecurity there. So I felt that way about the church that I grew up in. I was like, I think deep down there is a level of insecurity somewhere because they were so adamant that I stop asking questions at all and would get in
Yeah,
trouble for asking questions. It's almost like looking back on it now, there that feels very insecure in your belief.
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to question something, that the logic there is that it can't stand up to questioning, can't stand
Hmm.
up to like logic and reason. Thus, people fight really hard to just hold on to their beliefs and not ever challenge them. Um, so you and I have had like a number of conversations about this topic recently because it's become more and more important, I think, as time has gone on, especially with the Trump administration. Um, with them trying to portray themselves as like the saviors of Christianity in America. Uh, so I I had Claude do some research for me because I think one of the things, one of the reasons that we put this in the Make It Make Sense segment, one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is that we don't really understand how any Christian could think that Trump or the Trump administration is a good representation of Christian values.
I know.
Um,
Especially when
and
you pair it with like, you know, they literally sent someone to hang out with me to steer me, the lost sheep, back to the flock because I said that I'm voting Democrat now, or I aligned myself with at the time it would have been Obama. Like I support this administration. Um, they were worried about me. Um, but yet they align themselves with a man like him, and they don't see a problem with him, but they do see a problem with like me. I think that's pretty crazy.
it's interesting. And so I had Claude. I asked Claude to just pull some research because it's my favorite research assistant about uh, what arguments the Christian right might have for why Donald Trump and his administration are upholders of Christian values, and then why liberals feel like Trump and the administration are corrupters of Christian values. Um, and Claude basically it gave me some topics, which we'll bring up a few, but it basically brought it once it did all its research. Its summary was basically that Christian nationalists pull a lot of their morality from the Old Testament, and liberal Christians pull a lot from Jesus
Mm-hmm.
and the New Testament.
That Old Testament was a bit more fire and brimstone.
It was,
God was a different God in the Old Testament.
yeah. And I think one of the interesting things that, well, it happened to me this year was, as you know, like over the holidays, we went to go to my uncle's funeral. Your first Catholic funeral,
It
as
was
we
my
put
first
it.
Catholic service.
We went to this beautiful Catholic church in New Jersey, and the um the father there's like he said so many beautiful things about my uncle and just about uh Catholicism and Christianity in general that it made me kind of think about it again, to the point where I started rereading the Bible earlier this year because I was like, you know what? Haven't given the book a crack in a while. Let's see what's in here and see if
Yeah.
see how this resonates with me again. So I did that, and I started listening to there's a podcast that Ascension puts out called The Bible in a Year. And so I started to listen to Father Mike Schmitz, I think is his last name, uh, and his sort of interpretation of the parts of the Bible that I was reading. And one of the interesting things that he said that you and I have talked about before is that the Old Testament is God meeting people where they're at, uh, seeing that like we're in a much more uh,
Primal.
retribution based, primitive, primal society at that point in human development. And so his rules and his laws at that time are the way that they are because he's trying to meet people where they're at. And that by the time we get to Jesus in the New Testament, he's trying to help humanity evolve to a better form of themselves, right? Um,
Somewhere a Baptist just killed over, saying that God was trying to help them evolve. Somewhere, some out there, a Baptist just hit the damn deck. Resuscitate them, please.
so so that is interesting in that the way that Claude laid out these arguments, it's the Old Testament versus the New. Um, so it pointed to a few things, right? So first, and probably the largest battle that America's had ongoing, abortion and the sanctity of life.
I've heard that all the time too. I'll interject real quick.
Yeah.
Cannot tell you how many times I wish I had a dollar for every time a someone I've been debating who was Christian told me that I do not care about dead babies, that I love dead babies, that I want more dead babies. I cannot tell you how many times I've been told that.
Yeah.
I do not care about dead babies.
It's an interesting one. So the the conservative view of this, right, is that life begins at conception and thus must be protected and preserved and what have you. Um, the liberal version of this is that unwanted babies lead to unwanted societal uh, problems and issues, right? Like after Roe v. Wade went into effect, uh, in the decades after, violent crime went down significantly. And one of the theories is that because there were less families struggling to provide for children that they couldn't afford, and because there were less unwanted children out there fighting for themselves on the streets, violent crime went down. So there's, I think the liberal view of abortion is that, Jesus's teachings focus on uh, the poor, the sick, and the marginalized, and trying to help them live
One's looking
better
for
lives.
handouts.
Sure. And that things like cutting Medicaid and food assistance for vulnerable children and families contradicts that like pro-life view that some Christians have. That like
That's
what life are these people living if they're being dropped off at the fire station on the corner?
well, that's the thing is that conservatives like to pretend that they care about life, um, but as soon as the baby is born, they don't care about that thing because they have no social programs for you know, um, orphanages are overrun. There's no social programs out there to help those people. Those, under marginalized kids who can't go to hardly school, who can't get free breakfasts and free lunches at school. Like they don't want any of that stuff. They don't want it. They don't care about that. They don't want to pay for that. They don't want to
Right.
take care of the kid. They just want to make sure that the kid gets here because they're like, oh, life is precious. But once they get here, they become a statistic to them that they like to rail against, that Democrat cities are like overrun with homeless people and shelters and riffraff and filth all over the street. That's the same people they're talking about. They don't care about life.
Yeah. And I think that's probably been largely the Democrat view for quite some time is that like if you really cared about life, you would care about like um universal health care, you would care about uh like childcare assistance for families who do have children, you would care about like free lunches for kids and better social programs and after school programs and things that would actually help children and families lead better, more productive lives and potentially lift them out of poverty at some point. So,
More people out of poverty makes a happier nation, and a
yeah.
happier nation is a successful nation.
uh, then we get to immigration. Um, this one's interesting because Claude, uh, here's what Claude had to say about the Christian nationalist view of immigration. Enforcing borders protects the Christian nation from disorder and crime. Uh, Vice President Vance cited medieval Catholic theology, Ordo Amoris, to argue Christians are obligated to prioritize their own communities and fellow citizens first. And then restricting illegal immigration is about maintaining lawful order, which is biblically supported function of government in Romans 13.
Is he talking
So
about moats? Medieval times moats? Is that what he's talking about? Just kidding. He's
yeah.
like, it leads to the plague.
Uh, but this one's the most interesting recently, right? Because Pope Francis has come out really on the side of immigrants. I mean, he's spending July 4th welcoming immigrants in Italy. So, uh, he has rebuked Trump on mass deportations. Uh, he argued that, you know, Christians' love isn't a hierarchy of interests. Like Vance tried to say, it was like you put your family first, and then your neighbors, and then your
Hmm.
state, and then your country or whatever. And he was like,
Love
no,
thy
you
neighbor.
yeah, love thy neighbor is all people at all times.
Hmm.
Um, and then uh,
Well, I think it's also just very difficult for. It's hard for me to watch. So, like, I was watching all of the same footage of the ICE raids, the immigrants being torn apart from their families, being beaten, pulled from windows, children being tear gassed by ICE. ICE were acting like a bunch of damn animals. And it was hard for me to watch. Like I got like physically, emotionally angry watching that stuff. And I think it's crazy or it would be very hard for a Christian to sit there and watch that and be like, that's what we want. These images are exactly what we want in this country. But that's kind of what was going on. I mean, because I had,
yeah,
people who I follow on Facebook from my old days of church going, people who raised me in the church, Sunday school teachers and things like that, who avow themselves to be Christians, followers of Christ, and they were ecstatic, applauding these people getting torn out of their homes, getting ripped apart, their families sent away, not even knowing where they are. Some family members being like, I have no idea where this person is, being sent to gulags in other countries that they're not even a part of. Um, this is not what we want in this country. This is not who we should be. One, as a Christian nation, as we claim to be, but two, as Americans, this is not the kind of behavior that we should be having in this country. And I was appalled by it. And
yeah,
I don't even consider myself to be that big of a crit. Like this is just me as a human being. I'm like, I am appalled by this.
yeah,
And I would have expected more Christians to come out. Now I have lost faith in Christians of a certain sect, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but it was, and I just could not believe how many Christian or people who follow Christ or claim to. I don't think they're real, but like the claim to could stand by and watch this stuff on immigration. It's unchristian to me. It's not even it's not even humanity
yeah,
watching
and
this.
someone inhuman.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Pope has been tweeting a lot about this. We'll get more into the Pope's fight in a minute, but he's basically been stating that a nation's moral standing is shown in how it treats its most vulnerable.
And we've lost our
Um,
morals then.
and yeah, I think looking around at everything that we witnessed with, people being ripped apart, but also American citizens being murdered on the streets,
Yes.
uh, I just don't understand how you can look at the way that immigration is being currently enforced and think that that's what God would have wanted. If you're trying to look at it from a Christian perspective, it seems absurd to me. Um,
It's because it
and
is.
and
That's
and
because it is absurd.
by the same count, though, this also goes to Trump's um like fight against transgender people. Uh, that you can group them in with the marginalized and the most vulnerable, and which is largely why liberal Christians to this day argue that, love thy neighbor also applies to people of like LGBTQ affiliation. Um,
It applies to everyone because everyone is, if it's true, if you believe it, everyone is God's creation and God doesn't make mistakes, right?
right.
So there you go. Everyone is one of God's creations. I would say the only mistake he made was Donald Trump. That's clearly a mistake. That's
Or unless
clearly a
Donald
mistake.
Trump is here just to teach us all about what
Actually,
morality actually should be.
quick sidebar. That's actually I've had this conversation with my mom. She has told me, I'll paraphrase this, but she has told me a few times that she thinks that Donald Trump was put there to reveal who is Christian and who is not. You know, he's kind of making Christians look at themselves and see how Christians have lost their way. She believes that was his main function.
Yeah. I mean, I to a certain extent, I agree. I feel like Donald Trump has brought out the worst in a lot of people.
He's brought out the worst in humanity for sure. There's
And
no doubt.
if you are out there, like who did you tell me this morning has decided to come out as against?
Sean Hannity.
There you go.
Sean Hannity is saying that he no longer wants to align himself with the Catholic Church. Um, so he's chosen his God,
Just the Church of Trump.
just as the Church of Trump. So he's chosen his God. He's clearly like, yeah, my Lord and Savior is Donald Trump. And I think a lot of Christians have. I have Christians in my family who are big supporters of Donald Trump. Um, went to his rallies, and they can do whatever they want. They're grown adults; they can support whoever they want. But I almost feel like sometimes the Trump for me is ultimately a debate of morality because he's so immoral to me and he's so disgusting. But since he's so immoral in my eyes, I almost feel like anyone who follows him, it questions their morality. Because unlike politics of old, I think back to the election before him when it was Obama running against Mitt Romney. That wasn't a politics wasn't about morals then. It was just about which direction do we want to go in economically or policy making. But it wasn't like a party of morality or something like that. Like it wasn't about that. But now it seems to become that way because if you support Trump, what does that mean, right? Like it means you're okay with certain things that are terrible. A terrible way of behavior, the way you treat women, the way you treat immigrants, the way you treat others. Like I don't know, like so when especially when a Christian tells me that like they support Donald Trump, or when anyone tells me they support Donald Trump, I automatically wonder about that person's moral judgment. Does that make sense?
As yeah, as do I. I'll skip a bunch of the other things that are on this document because, we're gonna run a little long anyway this week, but here's what Claude had to say about Trump's personal character and the right versus the left. Uh, the right, it said, like King David in the Old Testament, Trump is a flawed vessel chosen by God for a divine purpose. His personal failings are irrelevant to his providing role in protecting Christians and America. Now, further up on the document, Claude gives some examples of Trump not protecting Christians at all. So be that as it may, but they're not
Protecting
looking at that
Christians.
part
I mean,
right.
that's the thing. It's like protecting Christians. They make up 62% of America.
Yeah.
The rest of us need protecting. We need protection from the Christians.
Technically, you and I are both are Christians, but the on the liberal side, he said liberal Christians argue that character matters, that boastfulness, cruelty toward enemies, and the accumulation of personal power contradict the Sermon on the Mount's teaching on humility, mercy, and peacemaking.
He
And I
has no
think that
humility.
that in particular is, I think, what the Pope has been trying to convey when he speaks. I mean, let's just talk about his one most recent one of the most recent tweets he put out there, right? So on April 17th, he tweeted, "Woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth." Uh, Pretty on the nose
Mm-hmm.
for the Pope.
He's done a really good job in this battle. I was telling you the other day, the genius thing about him and what he's doing is that he has never once named Donald Trump in any of these posts. But Donald Trump is the one who's been replying back as if these are personal attacks against him, which kind of makes me think that somewhere underneath all of that McDonald's that he eats, somewhere beneath the Big Macs, there is a conscience. And it's kind of getting to him that he reads this and he's like, he's clearly talking about me because
Hmm.
I know deep down that he's right. I am a horrible person. I've, but I was telling you, a good pastor, a good preacher, minister, whatever that role may be, a religious leader, is going to speak in generalizations because, it was the kind of thing I remember as a kid sitting there on the front row that it almost felt like the preacher would be talking about me, right? Like to the point where you'd be like, did mom tell him something about me? Because he's speaking in such a generalization. The way he's supposed to do it is when he gives a sermon, he's supposed to make you think like, I've done that. I have thought those things. I have been that way before. I need to change. I need to go and reflect on who I am as a person and align myself. So he speaks broadly and uses broad generalizations when he's doing a sermon. And the Pope is doing that here. The Pope isn't taking any hot takes. The Pope is saying war is bad and those who commit war are bad. He's saying the tyrants are bad. It's just Donald Trump is so stupid that he's coming out and being like, how dare you say that about me? Revealing to all of us what we already know. But the crazy thing is that because he has become a cult like religious figure, there are people who are now going against the church over him. Again, maybe kind of going back to what my mom's theory was, is that he is shining a light on certain Christians that they have put a false idol before God, which is on the Ten Commandments. A fun game that we should play actually is pulling up the Ten Commandments, seeing how many of these Donald Trump has broken.
Maybe
That'd be
we'll
a
do that
fun
on a
game.
future episode.
Yeah, a fun game to play. Maybe you can play this at home. Go now and pull up the Ten Commandments with your friends and family and go down each one and see how many this son of a bitch has done.
But family
So,
fun night
yeah.
brought to you by Justin and the
Next
Pope.
family game night, that's what you can play.
It is interesting though, right? So we've got this Old Testament versus New Testament fight kind of it's always been brewing, but somehow Republicans have have uh co-opted Christianity as like if you're a Christian, you're a Republican, which is obviously not true in the context of America. One of the things that I found the most interesting that I saw recently, if you haven't seen that 60 Minutes interview with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops or the cardinals that they had on there, um, definitely recommend watching that. But they noted that there has been an increase in attendance at specifically Catholic uh, churches across the U.S. That like 140 dioceses are reporting an increase in attendance. Uh, like
Well, they did
139,
lose one. They lost Sean Hannity, so
well, yeah, 139% increase in LA, a 52% increase in Chicago, and a 36% increase in New York. And one of the things that I found most interesting was also that Gen Z, 15 up from 15% to 21% as
so the
uh,
kids are going.
self-identifying as Catholic. It's it's interesting because in particular it started this year and at the beginning of this year. Um,
That can't be a
and
coincidence.
I don't really think it is. Part of me wonders if what people are really seeking is a kind of moral center, a moral certainty, a moral leader. Um, and we have seen so many institutions fail us in the US so far. We've seen media companies go down, we've seen universities go down, we've seen law firms, people who really should be fighting because they actually know the
Mm-hmm.
laws.
They know the laws.
We've seen those people just capitulate to Trump. Uh, no one seems to be standing up for American values or for the vulnerable, oddly, in the way that the Catholic Church is all of a sudden.
Which I think is the defining. So that's my point. I think is that that's been what I think the church always should do. They're the ones who are supposed to. We have this thing in this country called separation of church and state, or we did. And I think that's where a role of a church is supposed to come in. They are supposed to protect the vulnerable against tyranny, governments, anything like that. Just be there to protect the impoverished, those who are in need. We've not seen any of this. When ICE was going around, we saw pastors, right-wing pastors, applauding the ICE agents.
Yeah.
But I think people, like you said, I think people are so starved for something that's good, a moral center, to see someone stand up against this, um, and to come from the Catholic Church, what an arc that's been. Like what a character change. But
Yeah.
to see
I
it
mean, there
coming,
comedians have made that joke, right? That the only thing the Catholic Church and the Trump administration have in common is that they've both protected pedophiles at some point.
yes,
Um,
yes,
so like it's a crazy character arc for the Catholic Church that all of a sudden people are, in my view, because I feel this way, being drawn back to the Catholic Church because it is standing as a beacon of morality amidst a bunch of amoral and immoral people and institutions and acts. That it's out there at least trying
yeah,
to bring to light the horrors that it's seeing and the fact that if you take that religion at its face, if you look at what Jesus actually spoke, none of this would align with those teachings.
yeah. I think people are desperate. I know I am. I'm desperate for something good, and it has been good to see. It's been funny, but it's also been really good to see the Catholic Church take a stand against them. And it's been funny to see the lines that are being drawn about people saying the Pope should stay out of matters of war and he should keep his mouth shut. It's like
Yeah,
he's the Pope. He's
yeah,
not a political figure. He's not he's the Pope. I don't know, but I'm glad to see someone doing something because like you I have been just disheartened by all the people who have been willing to capitulate.
yeah. And let's be clear, Democrats and Republicans both. We're not
Yes.
saying that either party is doing a good job at this point. In fact, I'm pretty pissed off at most Democrats in
Pretty
Congress.
much all of them, in fact.
Yeah, there's
They're
like
pretty feckless. They're
a
pretty
few that are
feckless.
out there trying to do the
Yeah,
right thing, and the rest are doing nothing.
they don't care. I think I think Democrats often um would rather play defense than go on the offense. Because I think the problems that face us as a nation are not going to be solved by electing someone here and there. They're going to have to it's going to have to be things that get put in place that take a long time, but we have to put those things in place and then kind of watch it grow. Like you don't plant an apple tree and then go pick the apples the next day. You have to wait for the tree to grow and the apples to do the thing. And I think that's where the Democrats are afraid they don't have. I don't think they have an effing plan.
And even if the ones that do, there are so few of them who can eloquently speak about their vision or charismatically speak about what they believe the country should be and like how to get there. And uh, it's been somewhat anathema in the Democratic Party to speak about religion and politics because we tend to believe so hard in the separation of church and state. But I think a good Democrat going forward is going to have to figure out, and the Democratic Party in general is going to have to figure out how to break this idea that you brought up at the beginning that you cannot be both a Democrat and a Christian, or you can't be a Democrat and hold some religious values, uh,
Yeah, we have to
because
break
it's
that
really
because
doing damage.
I feel like that would be pretty easy to break, though. If you come out and you just, because people are so starved for morality, because people are so starved for something good, if you just came out and showed humanity, showed humility, um, talked about your personal beliefs, faith, we're just open. I think that can go a long ways. Donnie has done a good job, and he was true to himself. Um,
It's true.
and he was able to win a lot of folks over, and
But
has done and
to be clear
continues to do
though,
a good job as mayor.
this is in the Northeast.
Yeah,
Not a hard sell.
not a hard sell. Not up there. Down here, that would be, well, they'd be calling him a terrorist and a Muslim and all kinds of
Yeah. I don't know.
communists.
It's gonna be a hard road ahead, I feel like. But it it's been interesting to watch this sort of Old New Testament fight
Hmm.
break out, and been really weird to watch the President of the United States fight with the first American Pope. Um,
I can't wait to see the president read the Bible on live television.
we
That's going to
should
be
really
fun.
take bets on what book he pulls from.
I know. I wonder what kind of stories, because Christians love to cherry pick verses anyway that kind of like they can mold or shape into something they want it to be. So I kind of think he's not going to go anywhere near Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. I don't think he reads from the red text. I don't think he reads anything from Jesus's words. I think they do go. I think they do go Old Testament.
And once again, I will say, woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth. So let's all watch this week as
Do you know what they
Donald
could
Trump
do?
drags us further into darkness and
They
filth.
could just they could just quote from more Tarantino movies. They could do that.
They could.
They could have him go up there
Might
and
be a
just read.
better
Yeah,
idea.
we can see Donald Trump just deliver monologues from various movies that sound religious in tone.
True. We could. Well, we'll see what happens this week. I think we'll leave it there for now. If we have more to say on this topic, we can try again next week. I guess it'll depend on which Bible verse he reads as to whether or not we
Yes.
decide to bring this back up. But you know, religion is complicated, politics is complicated. I think all we've proven is that it's really hard to make sense of the two of them alone and together. So, uh, perhaps we failed at our objective of making it make sense, but maybe we challenge someone to think a little bit differently about how they're viewing the world this week. We can only
I
hope.
hope so.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our side quest, things that brought us joy this week. But in the meantime, we decided to add a little new bit to make it make sense, just to leave users with like the Daily Show used to say, a moment of Zen. So until next time, here is your emotional support animal for the week.
Mm. Take it easy.